Hey, welcome to Indoor Reef. Today we're going to talk about what, in my opinion, is the number one factor in maintaining a healthy reef tank. My name's Rob. Almost 2 years ago I set up my first Nano Reef aquarium. Over this time I've learned there's a lot of factors that go into keeping a successful reef tank. Today I'm going to talk through some of these and, in my opinion, point out which I think is the most important factor overall keeping a successful reef tank. So I'm really keen to hear what you think is the most important factor in maintaining a healthy reef tank. So please go down and leave a comment now about what you feel is the most important factor. So let's now start talking about some of the factors that might influence how well a reef tank does. So I guess the first and most obvious of these would be water. In our reef tanks we've got relatively small amounts of water, and in my tank here I've only got 50 litres of water, so this is very, very different to what you would find on the real wild reefs where you've got an entire ocean worth of water. What this means is it's harder to maintain those nutrients and minerals that the corals need to remain healthy. And it's also a lot quicker for things to go out of balance. So in the real ocean, it's like an infinite pool of minerals and nutrients that are brought to the corals. So as soon as some are taken, the corals take some out of the water, there's so much of it there that it's constantly replenished. Whereas in my small 50 litre tank, when you take nutrients out, the overall pool of nutrients in my tank starts falling quite quickly. So keeping the water healthy is really important to maintaining a reef tank. One of the ways we do this is we do regular testing of the water so that we can add extra nutrients if it's needed, and we can also add these nutrients through water changes. So most people would agree that one of the important factors for maintaining a reef tank is to keep the water healthy. Another important factor we should think about when we talk about maintaining a healthy reef tank is light. So light is really important. One of the reasons for this is most of the corals that we keep in our reef tanks just can't survive without light because they require light to photosynthesize and produce their food. The other reason why light is important is it makes our corals look better, and let's be honest, one of the reasons we keep a reef tank is so we can enjoy the bright colours of the corals, and certainly for me that's an important factor. And the way we light our reef tanks changes the way they look, so lighting is really important from this point of view as well, because if you have really poor lighting or the wrong spectrum of colours in your lighting, then your corals won't look as good, so you won't be feeling like you're maintaining as healthy a reef tank, even if it is, because it just doesn't look as good to you. So lighting is a really important factor. Okay, on to the next factor. So for me this would be flow. In our reef tanks, without doing anything, we would end up with no flow and the water would be very stagnant. This is not representative of what you find on a real reef. On a real reef there's a lot of movement of the water, and it's actually this movement that brings the nutrients to the corals and also removes detritus and debris that can build up around them and irritate them. So it's really important that different types of coral have the right amount of flow for that type of coral. So there's some types of SPS who like very high flow, whereas other types of coral prefer a much lower flow. And in a lot of cases, many coral can adapt to different types of flow, but if you don't give the coral the type of flow that it needs, either too low or too high, then that coral just won't thrive the same way that it would if you give it the correct flow. Giving a coral too much flow can cause it to close up, and it can cause it to become damaged. For example, if you give an acorn, a fleshy LPS coral, too high a flow, you can actually rip that flesh from the coral and ultimately kill it. The amount and type of flow that you put over your corals actually change the way the coral grows as well. So for example, some corals will grow in different patterns depending on the flow that they've got, and some corals, although they might like high flow, will respond better to random high flow, like turbulence, rather than they would for just straight battering them with high flow straight over the top. Temperature Temperature is a really important parameter we have to control in our tank. So I keep mine at 25 degrees, which I felt was a good balance. But if you cannot not control this temperature and keep it consistent, then the corals are constantly trying to adapt and they don't have time to settle and really thrive. So this leads me on now to what is the most important factor? What is the number one factor for keeping and maintaining a healthy reef tank? And the reality is all of the things we've discussed, but at the same time, none of them. Actually, the most important factor is stability. When I first started out, I didn't test anything at all and I didn't have a clue what was going on in my tank. But once I started building a bit of experience and started performing testing and started getting a bit better picture of what was going on in my tank, I started looking up what are the ideal values, for example, for my water and what is the exact amount of flow for each coral. And while this is really, really important for learning and so that you can provide the right environment, I think over time I've started realizing actually chasing numbers, so that is trying to get the precise values that you maybe hear are optimal, doesn't actually achieve the results you want because you're constantly adjusting. And the reality is it's very hard to maintain that exact balance. So what I would say is if things are stable and things are looking good, don't try and change just that tiny bit just to keep to the value that it should be, because actually that process of changing can cause more damage than if you just settle with the values how they are. When my tank has been looking the best, it's by far being when I've kept things stable. So this means keeping your water parameters stable, keeping the flow consistent, keep the lighting consistent, even how much you feed the tank. All of this goes into affecting the overall stability of your reef tank. So my recommendation is try and resist the temptation to move things all the time, to change things too often. It's great to improve, but ultimately if you want to really see the best out of your reef tank, try and keep things stable. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it the thumbs up, like it, subscribe to the channel. Alright folks, so I guess all that's left to say for this video now is until next time on Indoor Reef, keep it stable, keep it fun, and keep reefing.